This record, I keep telling my friends who want to know what it's about, I tell them it's your musical Bible. You get this record, and what you hear in there is our history in the church. My age, as far as 1940, even back then. Hey, this is Ron Carter. Great jazz is made possible by listeners like you. This is San Diego's Jazz 88.3.
A broadcast service of City College and the San Diego Community College District. This is Jazz FM 88.3 KSDS San Diego. I'm Dave Drexler with Inside Art. Funding for Inside Art comes from the members of San Diego's Jazz 88.3. And you can join right now to support this program during our winter membership campaign by calling 619-388-3000. This week on Inside Art, we welcome one of the most revered musicians in all of jazz and the most recorded jazz bassist in history. Best known as the anchor of Miles Davis's second great quintet in the mid-1960s, Ron Carter is a three-time Grammy-winning NEA Jazz Master and DownBeat Hall of Fame icon whose contributions as an instrumentalist and composer across many generations are immeasurable. Carter's new album, Sweet, Sweet Spirit, a collaboration with choirmaster Ricky Dillard and the New G Choir, is a deeply personal project honoring the memory of his late mother, Willie O through the hymns that shaped his family's household and the Detroit church community where they worshiped. This gospel-jazz hybrid represents a monumental moment for both genres, merging two Black American art forms, each with spiritual and cultural roots, into something completely new. With me to talk about Sweet, Sweet Spirit and his extraordinary life in music, I'm pleased to welcome the great maestro himself, Ron Carter. Ron, it's an honor to have you here on Inside Art.
DD, thank you very much, David Drexler.
First of all, this project that you've just released is about 30 years in the making, I understand?
At least. It started out by my sisters who were taking care of my mom as she aged. Thought that she would be better suited to go to a nice nursing home at her age and her stage of her life. And they thought that if they could get in a nice nursing home facility, she'd want to hear some of her music, some of her hymns. So they asked me, could I put together some music for her? And I explained to my sisters, I don't have a computer. I have no music system. No. So they said, well, look, she needs to help. When she goes to her new home, she needs some comfort. And to hear her songs would give her that need. I said, well, okay, you talk me into it. Give me my arm back because you just finished twisting it. Now, so I went out and bought a computer with a music program. I have in my library several old hymns of our neighborhood and old black hymnals. I picked out 12 songs, or 10 songs, I guess, that I knew she knew very well. And I figured out how to make a disc of 10 of these songs on a little CD, and my sisters bought a boombox, it's called back in those days, to play a little CD on. And they took it to her, and she was just thrilled to know that in her real quiet time, she could hear her music in the background. Having said that, as you might imagine, I've been asked for a long time, what's my next project? And for a long time, I said, I don't know. And I kind of brushed him off to get off my case. I don't know. And I saw this person about 2 years ago. His name was Don Was.
Now the head of Blue Note.
And the first thing he said was, how are you? I'm doing fine. He said, what's your next project? The second question. So I gave him a 3-line sentence of a 4-paragraph story. He said, I think I know the person who might help you. His name is Ricky Dillard. He's called like the maestro of gospel choirs. So I don't know his name, but I know the gospel music choir sound, but I don't know anybody who's responsible for it. And I've never been to a real gospel church choir concert. So I trust you that he's the guy who at least would talk to me about how dumb I am about his music. We met shortly after that, and we had a nice conversation and agreed that my bass playing maybe help the choir go somewhere else. And I knew the music, and I know if my mom ever heard it again, she'd be elated that now wherever she is upstairs, she's got her own music CD with her music. So I fooled around and made a sample and sent it to them, and they liked it. My sister liked it, and I met with Mr. Dillard several times and agreed on trying to make arrangements out of these 10 songs with my skeleton arrangements, and his arranger, Zeke Lestenby, who's a lovely man, and is a very good organ player and keyboard player. We came across some ideas of rhythms and changes, and he trusted Mr. Listenby to find the right bass notes to make his chord do something else. And with Mr. Dillard's dynamism, he's a dynamo. It's really an exciting event for me to be a part of. If you could imagine standing in front of an 80-voice choir who are singing their lungs out with mechanical precision, rhythmically and pitch-wise, and their intention is to beat up every note to its maximum. And I'm the guy standing in front of them with a string bass. I'm going to make them sound different, with a different choice of rhythm and different choice of notes. God is my witness. he helped me find some right notes and some good rhythms. And man, did we have fun for the concert that we did. They're an exceptional group. He is an exceptional choir director. And with my nerve and with my audacity, I was able to find some pretty good notes for him, and we had a great time. This record, I keep telling my friends who want to know what it's about, I tell them it's your musical Bible. You get this record, and what you hear in there is our history in the church. My age, as far as 1940, even back then. And those words, as I've been listening to them with some real focus for the past year, trying to make these arrangements work with the lyrics and stuff, is our plea, the church's plea, the religious needs of the church who fulfilled the crying space for these people, the slaves, the early churchgoers. They were pleading for some help, pleading for some relief of this pressure that they're under, asking to be equal, asking to live while they want to live. These hymns, Drexler, have this meaning to them that as I'm 8 years old, I'm just going with the melody. You know, I understand what the words meant 75 years later, man. And I'm a little embarrassed to say it out loud, but that's the fact of the matter. Now I understand. I understand what they were singing 80, 90 years before me. And heaven knows how many years before them were these hymns, the salvation of those people's wishes to get a better shake on life. So this record, as I explained to people, is a historic musician's view of his history. The jazz musicians of my age group certainly grew up in the church. There weren't jazz clubs. There weren't much radio station play. And most of the guys who are 70 and up, they know those hymnals. They know those churches. They miss that kind of congregational meeting every Sunday and every Wednesday during rehearsals and the Bible class. They miss that stuff because it's not available to them most places now. And this record, when they have heard it, my friends, they say, man, I want to go back home. And thank my mom, my grandmother, my aunt, my auntie. They know all these songs, man, and I'd like to thank you for bringing it back. There was jazz people in church way before Aretha Franklin and Mahalia Jackson and Kurt Franklin and James Cleveland. We've all been up in that church, and this is a chance for me, with the help of Don Woods for production and Ricky Dillard, his skill level, that directing a choir to the feeling of the lyrics, and Zeke lessened me to find the right notes and the right rhythms and the right pitch for these keys to sing the stuff in. And God blessed me also for finding the right notes to make them do something different.
We're with bassist extraordinaire Ron Carter, and the new album is Sweet, Sweet Spirit, available from Blue Note Records. How was this recorded? Was this a live concert that was recorded?
No, this was the YouTube video was live, but the record is a matter of the choir working out their parts, sending me the tape with me and Lynn, Zeke, and Ricky listening to the parts in New York, and me with a bass and some sketch paper and erasers and fixing my parts so that I could kind of know where they were and not have to guess all the time.
Well, the bass is definitely driving these pieces.
Yeah, that's my job.
Well, maybe you can talk a little bit of what else encompasses your job over the years. How has that evolved?
Well, I've gotten better at doing it, One of the things I've learned is that these people who call me for their project have listened to a real lot of bass players. They listen to a real lot of tracks, to a really lot of music. Why? Because there are a lot of really good bass players, man. In all spectrums of the music, whether it's upright or electric, there's some fabulous players. And most of those people who enjoy good bass playing have decided of all the choices they have, I'm one of their first choices to make their music end up somewhere else. They all have a view of what they can sound like in their ears when you're faced with these, in New York anyway, the live cast, musicians who make it breathe. When you find one guy who in particular adds that special sauce, that just the right amount of black pepper or cayenne pepper, or just the right iced lettuce. Get that guy, because we need that in our salad. And sometimes it's just me for those records. And I like to leave these groups thinking that I gave them the best I had. And that when I'm gone, they would start to come back.
Well, looking back, tell me a little bit about your mother. This is an album that's dedicated to her. What type of person was she?
She was a staunch believer, David, that her kids could do anything. And she was not going to allow anyone outside the family to tell them what they could not be and what they could not do. She would go to the PTA meetings back in the day and explain to the principal that my son and my daughter, they were built for good things. And how dare you insinuate that they're reaching for the stars is an impossible feat for kids of color.
And you certainly did encounter racial stereotypes, particularly in the world of classical music, as you were training to become a classical artist originally.
Yes, and whenever this topic comes up and the interview is kind of bold, implying that it's changed, in the 40 years, I said, well, I tell you what we do. You go to Google and look up the 4 or 5 major orchestras over the past 30 years. And you tell me how the proportion of Native Americans, African Americans, women, how has that ratio changed from the white guys playing third viola for years? And it's just to let them know that in our heads we imagine it's gotten better. But the fact of the matter is it hasn't gotten enough better, given all the kids who go to classical schools looking for an orchestra to play in, and they end up doing Broadway shows. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're geared to attitude for all these lives to play violin and Beethoven, play some Strauss, to play some Bach chorales, to play the orchestral library that they've played for years. And they're reduced, I say that just because they want to earn a living still playing music, having a little studio giving lessons, that they're doing something else with the instrument. Yes, I say that because it has not changed measurably. And when I was in college, I was doing little jazz gigs just because I didn't have enough money, the scholarship to do without it. And the guys told me, look, the jazz community has come through New York because it's on the way back from Canada back to New York City on the train. And we know the scene, and we think that, some of us think that you can make a living in New York playing bass. You should come to New York when you graduate. Well, August 59, I did that. And here I am still trying to make a living.
We're talking with bass icon Ron Carter, whose newest project is Sweet, Sweet Spirit, just released from Blue Note Records. And we'll continue our conversation in just a few moments here on Inside Art on San Diego's Jazz 88.3.
I once was lost in sin, Jesus took me in, and then the light from heaven filled my soul. Oh yeah, he filled my heart with love, and he wrote my name above. And just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Oh yeah.
Funding for Inside Art comes from the members of Jazz 88.3. And you can join us right now during our winter membership campaign to support our award-winning jazz and arts coverage in San Diego. Volunteers are standing by to take your call at 619-388-3000 or join online at jazz88.org. And thank you.
Without a ray of cheer, and just a little cloud of doubt creeps over my day. Oh, the mist of sin may rise behind the starlight sky, but just a little talk with Jesus clears my way. Oh, yeah. Have a little talk with Jesus.
I'm Dave Drexler with Inside Art. This week joined by legendary bassist Ron Carter, whose new album Sweet, Sweet Spirit has just been released from Blue Note Records. Now, this is a celebration of your roots to a large degree, and you come from you're a product of the Detroit school system, which had fantastic bands. You were with the Cass Technical High School. You were among that cohort.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people came out there. A lot of wonderful players came out. It was the kind of the high school that would be equivalent to a junior college in today's educational standards and educational menus. It set the standard for what high schools can be responsible for the community.
It wasn't just your high school. It was all over the city.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, who were some of the people that you were hanging out with then?
Kirk Lightsey was there. Ira Jackson, a wonderful alto player. In Detroit itself was Barry Harris. There was Kenny Burrell. There was Thad and Hank Jones. Kenny's brother Billy, who played electric bass. There's Curtis Fuller. And there were tons of guys in and out that area who made it a meeting point for young players of the Midwest and the West headed toward New York. You'd stop in Detroit to see who was headed toward New York first. And that cauldron of jazz players there that were still turning out wonderful solos and wonderful compositions. My issue was I was not a jazz player during that time. I was wishing to be a classical cellist and a classical bassist. So my contact with those guys during my high school days was only to know that they existed and they were neighbors of mine. But to be a performer was not in my foreseeable future because I had spent playing classical music since I was like 12. And I was really very good at playing classical cello, honors and contests and stuff like that. And I switched to bass because I thought I wasn't getting the kind of calls a good bass cello was supposed to get. Cellists were supposed to get. Well, the bass player graduated, and I was pretty good at math, so 1 from 1 equals 0, but you must have a 1, so I'll be that 1. So I talked to my parents and let me trade my cello for a bass and got some lessons, and here I am with a smaller chip on my shoulder.
What do you think that training in the cello added to your understanding of the bass and the concepts that you played?
I think the first thing it showed me, Dave, was how to practice. And I say that because the more you work in New York, the less free time you have to practice. You just can't devote that kind of quiet necessarily to practicing. At least I can't do that. I have a limited time because I have a family, I have a couple of kids, I have obligations, I'm in the community. I have to find a time when I must practice. And only because I had this discipline of needing to practice to get better. To be competitive in the competitive market where everyone's looking for the one chair in the orchestra that's going to be available. And they all think that they've been playing since they were 3 with the Suzuki method, since they were 5. They put the time in, man, and I know that to be competitive in that spirit, you got to put in matching hours. Otherwise, you can't maintain the level. The level of the same library everybody knows. I mean, you can't go in there and put soap on your bow and look great for the camera guys and you're not please playing air, So one of the things I really learned as a cellist was you must maximize your time to increase your skill level, to be competitive in such a music as equal music is. The other thing I learned was listen to the big picture. I can remember back in the day when I was 12 or 14 going into an orchestra concert, man. And just being surrounded by 100 players, man. Can you imagine what that feels like, man? All the air coming, all the force in the air, and everyone knows their assigned music. They know their assigned parts, man. I think, and in fact of the matter is, if the conductor stopped conducting, the orchestra would keep on playing. That's how well they know what they're expected to play, because everybody knows the book. How can you compete with that familiarity level if you aren't maintaining your skills vis-a-vis practice? But in New York, I didn't have much time to practice because I was starting to work all the time. When I realized that I don't have the edge I need to maintain my name on the list to get some gigs, I got to practice my stuff, whatever it happens to be, my etudes, my exercises, my skill level events, to maintain the edge I think I'm going to need to remain competitive in New York, since everybody comes to New York to beat somebody else out of a job.
Well, you were ready for that moment when it came to you with Miles Davis. You were with Art Farmer back then. There's a famous story of how that interaction, how he asked you, and eventually you accepted the call to be in his band.
Yes. Yeah, well, I was working with Art Farmer with a quartet with Jim Hall playing guitar and Walter Perkins playing drums and myself. We had a 2-week gig at a place called the Half Note. It was downtown in New York near the waterfront. And after the first set, on one of the second or third night, Miles had come in during the course of the set, and when the set was over, he walked up to me and said that he was changing his band because the rhythm section was leaving to join the quartet with Wes Montgomery. And was interested in leaving because he had looking for a bass player to join the new rhythm section to go to California the next week. Was I available? And I said, well, Mr. Davis, I'm committed to Art Farmer for the next 2 weeks. If you will ask him to let me out of my commitment. He says, yes, I'm happy to go. He says no, and I owe him something. I'll finish up my commitment, and when I'm done, if you're still looking for a guy, I can be the person for you. And I got this student Art. I'm going to stay until he says go. So he went over to talk to Art. They had a nice 20-minute conversation. And Miles came back and said, well, Art said you can join the band. So I said, let me go ask him. So I did, and Art, he was humbled because I would think enough of him and his skill and enough of my commitment to him as a person to turn down a gig with the guy who invented dirt. I said, Art, I gave you my word, man. I mean, other than the bass, that's what I have. And we became dear friends, and I subsequently did several records with Art and several gigs with big bands and stuff like that. So he understood my question, and he was pleased that I had respect for him as a person and as a player, and I had my own moral values I was responsible for. And I think Miles understood that. He appreciated that too.
Well, you added so much. Were you considered sort of the leader of the unit? I mean, aside from Miles himself, were you tasked with being the responsible person? Well,
I won't put those guys in that category of being not responsible. But when we first met down in Miles's basement to kind of play something, our first official greeting of Herbie and Tony and George Colbert, we played 3 or 4 courses of a song, and Miles said, I'm going upstairs, I'll be back down. Hey, Ron, you're in charge. And that let me know that he saw me as a different link in the band. And one of the things we used to talk about was not music. We never talked about music. We talked about sports. We talked about the political scene in Harlem. We talked about the stock market. We like to hit golf balls, so we go to the driving range every now and then when we had time on the road. So I was this guy to talk about anything but music. And I appreciate that too, because I know I could tell this guy, man, Miles Davis.
So I've heard you describe that experience with that quintet as being very experimental most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had our boundaries. I mean, we all knew the form. We all knew the changes. So we were not being as experimental as generally defined as starting from zero every night. And we had some frames to work in. We had some things that were handed down that were still important to maintain the presentness of those songs. And we were 3 guys, me, Herbie, and Tony, who had a good memory of what worked last night and what needed to be developed the following night, the following sets. One of the things that came out of this relationship was one of my books called Chartography. What that is, it's a score of 5 different concerts playing the same opening, Autumn Leaves, and it shows my line on the first performance. It shows my bass line for the same opening for 4 successive concerts spread in about a year. And what it shows is how my line has not only evolved and developed for the next 4 concerts of this song, but how the band expects them to come up and how they respond with their rhythms or chord voicings or maybe not playing at the same time as my notes for them dictated their new approach. I was kind of one of the guys who not necessarily controlled that, but I would encourage that and go and figure how to make my line work with theirs. And the exchange of ideas and music was respected and looked for as I did with them, and with their input from Herbie and Tony and with George as well. I think when I was understood, we were all looking for another way to play the music without destroying what made the music worthwhile.
And as you look back, who are some of your own influences in either jazz or classical or elsewhere? It doesn't have to even be a bass player.
Well, it wasn't. My influence first was J.J. Johnson. I worked with him doing a tour with Frederick Goulda in Europe in the early 60s. I mean, I was familiar with jazz history because I taught it in school, so I knew what everyone back in the day did. And the trombone players that I used to see this would go, in and forth like this, J.J. Johnson never went past the bell for all those notes he played. And I couldn't understand. I understood the mathematics of the slide and stuff, but I couldn't understand how he could make those horn-like trills and those triplets and the range without going past the bell except to clean out the water in the slide, So I want to do that on bass. The next person who influenced me was Cecil Payne, who played baritone saxophone with Randy Weston in the early 60s, and I was in that band for 2 or 3 years. He played the same horn as all the other major baritone players, Pepper Adams, Serge Charloff, the guy with Duke Ellington. They all played the same horn, but Cecil Payne had his own sound. When you hear him play, that's Cecil Payne. Okay, I wanted that with me. I want to pick up the bass and play, and so I say, okay, I don't know anybody else, but that's Ron Carter on bass. And I'm still working to that today.
You're in search of the note. Is that how you describe it?
Finding the right note.
Finding the right note. You found it with this record. I think this is the most satisfying gospel record I've heard in my life, frankly. Sweet Spirit. Much. What pleases you most about it?
One, I can imagine my mom is hearing this. She's appreciative of it. Secondly, that we're able to mix these 2 genres that at one point seemed impossible because the jazz was always thought to be devil's music back in the day. And number 3, that Ricky Dillard, Zeke Lestonby, and myself could have enough patience to see what the end product could sound like, to put our eternal infernal effort and mindset to make this project so special that everyone must hear it.
Well, congratulations. You've accomplished all that and more with Sweet Spirit.
You.
And thank you, Ron Carter, for spending a few moments with us on Inside Art.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Sweet Spirit, Ron Carter's new album with choirmaster Ricky Dillard and the new G Choir, is available from Blue Note Records and can be purchased at BlueNote.com. You can also learn more about Ron Carter's music, bass instruction, and special edition collectibles at RonCarterJazz.com. Inside Art is made possible by the members of Jazz 88.3. And you can support our award-winning jazz and arts coverage right now during KSDS's winter membership campaign. Call us at 619-388-3000 or join online at jazz88.org. Our theme is created and performed by Bill Mays, whose music is available at billmays.net. Again, my thanks to Ron Carter. For Jazz 88.3, I'm Dave Drexler. Join me again on air and online for another edition of Inside Art. Breaking Jazz is next.